Okay, so the third question we're asking is, this is a really broad question, whatever you can respond to, whatever part of it you'd like. We talk about our district goals and our school goals and how they align with that. We like to focus on the CSEP, obviously, AVID, MTSS, cultural proficiency, SRG, and instructional framework. Now, of those, or whatever degree you'd like to speak to, how do the goals, the lesson, align with one, if not more, of those goals?
A lot of my goals in the lesson, or the lesson goals, support many of these things, and I guess I can just start with what I'm most comfortable with, is that I've done SRG for a while now, because I did, India and I were the team leaders when we rolled out SRG for level 1, and so I'm very comfortable with SRG, and I really like it because it makes it easy to give students continual updated feedback without having them to have to retake every little thing, and the scales are very clear, and it makes my job a lot easier. So SRG is always just something I've been comfortable with. It's not even like, it's not even really a thing I think about anymore. It's just something that I've been doing for most of the time I've been at Lincoln. So that's whatever. That's never been a thing for me. MTSS, though, is really new to me this year because I wasn't here last year. But it already kind of fits in with a lot of things that I was doing, especially giving them opportunities. Opportunities for retakes, opportunities to come in and get their grades up, opportunities to hit the learning target. And it makes sure that the students are continually learning the current material while giving them those opportunities to go back and revisit without taking like time out of the school day. And seminar is something that I didn't quite understand at first per se. Like I didn't, like it took me a minute to learn the process, but now when I know what's coming up, I can get with my PLC and be like, this is what we're doing. You know, we all know what we're doing in Spanish 2, how do we want to slice it and dice it so that we can get the Spanish 2 kids in. And since they have other preps besides me, I try to make sure that they get their kids into my room for help because I'm pretty much only doing Spanish 2 seminars, and so I'm really on top of it for them. I also think that grouping students together based on where their current standing is within like relation to the learning goal or the learning target supports the instructional framework because I'm differentiating my classroom enough to make sure each student has a way to learn what they need to learn to get to the goal, and a way to learn the material that best suits them on their own timeline. You know, it's not about how fast you can get the learning done, it's can you show me, can you demonstrate to me the learning, whether it be today, tomorrow, next week, or next month even, if it has to be. Cultural proficiency I also kind of touched on. I don't really just put it into my lesson plan, but I guess one thing I could add to that is we're in a school that is so diverse in terms of backgrounds that as a teacher working on this process of cultural proficiency, it's always the easiest. In my opinion, it's the easiest to look at yourself first. You can either choose to be upset if things aren't going the way that you think they should in your own head, or you can choose to try to do everything you can for yourself. It's a choice as a teacher. It's not even, there's no definite, to me, I'm on cultural proficiency committee, and a lot of times our goal with helping the staff reach that is I'm sorry, but you got to look at yourself and what you choose to react to and how you choose to react in your classroom. And, you know, that's just part of accommodating everybody. You're not here for you, you're here for students. So I guess that's what I try to keep in mind, like all the time. So,
Your mindset and your attitude.
One thing I guess I'm not as knowledgeable about as I should be or would like to be or whatever is AVID. I really haven't had a lot of exposure to AVID. I have AVID students, and I know the protocol, like they need to sit near the front. I ask them about their binders, or I don't really know much about it, but I try to offer that, like, I think you need a 3-hole puncher, like I try to pass that around a lot. I don't know, I just wish I knew a little bit more about AVID, but I try to be aware of, at the very least, aware of who those students are.
It all takes time too, it's a steady growth, right?
It does, so, but
Okay. All right. Awesome. How do you plan to engage the students in the content? What will you do? What will the students do?
Okay, so students learn through a variety of activities that have the same learning target. So if a student is is a visual learner or an auditory learner or a tactile, like kinesthetic kind of person. I try to swap up the activities enough, because if all the activities, if the day has the same learning target, and if I can give it to them through 3 different ways, then you're bound to catch most all of them.
So do you give them choices in that context, like same skill, different activity?
I don't usually give them choices when we're doing group-led activities, but I do change up the activity. So yeah, you might not like this activity, but in 15 minutes we're going to do an activity that I know will get my visual learners. And they all have the ending target be the same. And changing it up is a big part of that. So students that don't like to do, you know, readings and writings, they'll know that if they just do the activity and get through it, A, they're better for it because my activities are aligned to the target. And B, they'll get to move on and we'll do something else where we sing a song together. And those kids that like the musical kinds of things get to, you know, they help memorize something in Spanish. Or the kids that don't like the songs and they don't like singing, they prefer looking at the slides to see what they need. Those kids will get to do that in 15 minutes, you know. So same learning target, different activities.
So they know it's coming up the one they prefer.
Well, yeah, because we go through the agenda every day. So changing it up frequently is a pretty successful method to keep their activeness.
A little bit of variety in that sense.
Sometimes I give student choice as well, depending on if it's what we need to do. If it's something I can whip up and say, okay, we got to study vocab. Those of you that want to do flashcards, go get your flashcards. Those of you that want to do marker boards, go get a marker board. So then I'll give student choice there. So
that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. How will you know if your students are learning? So we talked about our goals for the lesson, that being, you know, speaking and writing, have the context of education and careers. How will you know that if the students are learning? What data point essentially would you use?
Okay, so we're talking about this as a PLC, like in terms of data, to get them to know if they hit the learning target, is to start having more of these entrance or exit tickets that we're actually going to make collaboratively, so that we can, and right now a couple of them are still focusing from last unit since we did struggle a little, but we're hoping to have us collaborate on some exit tickets that we find aligned to the learning goal, and so that the things that we're doing in class keep the exit ticket in mind too, because it doesn't help a kid do an exit ticket if you didn't talk about what's going to be on the exit ticket in class. And so to get them to know that they're learning, just besides constant monitoring for participation in my class, is to be able to make sure that they can either do the exit ticket, but all activities and practice CFAs in my class are ultimately geared toward what's on the CFA. What did we decide were their essential learnings as a district on this curriculum? And so we're trying to center around that quite a bit, and that means a lot of our activities and a lot of our practices are very, very, very closely aligned with what the actual CFA is. And I like to tell them that there's no surprises. So a lot of times when we do these little practice CFAs or practice activities in my class, if they get it on the practice, then I know they're going to be okay on the CFA too.
Right, because you know
there's a couple ways.
Obviously, your end goal is the CFA, work it backwards, even into your practices. So that's good. Okay.
Yep, all the way back.
So exit tickets kind of monitor that.
Yeah, we're going to add that piece in because the practice CFA is good, but I only give them practice CFAs 1 to 2 days out before a CFA.
Right.
So it's like, what about all the other days?
Right.
I don't want to wait for the practice CFA to see if they're going to get it. We need to get it up here too.
Right.
So that's where we're kind of pulling in some new ideas.
Okay.
A way to get them to do the learning target in an exit ticket. And it doesn't have to be like something on a piece of paper. The exit ticket, we can decide whatever we want that to be. But the first one is actually an entrance ticket, which we'll see tomorrow.
Sure.
So the slide that they're going to do for you is one that Miss Marshall and Alberto and I made because it's covering something that they didn't get from the last unit.
Okay.
So,
revisiting.
yes, revisiting. It's all kind of lumped into one.
Yeah.
But we're...
Like you said, you're constantly planning for the future, but also revisiting things that they need more help with.
Yes.
So you're being responsive to teaching, that's good.
Yeah.
So exit tickets to monitor their learning. What are you going to do if the students do not learn? I think we've sort of touched on this, but...
Yeah. So if the students aren't learning something, the first thing I would do would be just to go back to my PLC and discuss teaching strategies and learning strategies and say, how did you get them to learn this thing because my kids weren't responsive? I either didn't do a good job or they were having an off day or something, the reason doesn't matter. What matters is how can I re-deliver everything.
Right.
So the first thing before I take it to seminars, I discuss those strategies to see if they were successful, and then I'll use that strategy or could modify it, and then I'll just pretty much reteach it. It's okay if they don't get it in one day. Some of these concepts are difficult for them.
Right.
And so just reteach it, and then after that I would consider offering a seminar based around the learning